Welcome to another episode of Art Entrepreneur. I'm your host, Tutuzile Matunsi. Today we're talking about the unconfined artist, someone who refuses to let their craft be limited by traditional theater walls. My guest today is a French actor who's performed from South America to Europe, a Sorbonne graduate and an international performer who has taken his work into gardens, cathedrals, and even corporate classrooms. Please welcome my guest, Théophile Choquet.
That's right. Théophile Choquet. Choquet.
And
Thank
to
you,
think that I
Duduzile.
studied French.
Thank you, Duduzile, for having me with you here.
Thank you for being part of this. I appreciate you so much for this. And as an icebreaker, speaking of names and pronunciations of names, I wanted to ask, what is the meaning of your name? And you've been on stage since you were like 5 years old, and being so long in this business and the journey, the name kind of also what does the meaning of your name mean? And also, do you think that your name kind of has influenced who you've been, or is it something that is just completely not connected to you?
It has a meaning that is quite interesting if you know about my activity in churches, because I like coming to churches and temples with performances, art performances, theater performances. And my name's meaning is the one who loves God. And it's true. Yes, I think I'm a very spiritual person, but I put all my spirituality into theater making and acting. But it's always very funny because, of course, many people here in France know about the meaning of that name, which is quite old name. So it is more and more given to young boys today. That's nice. And I don't know. We have the name we have, and I never wanted to have a pseudonym. I've always wanted to keep my own name for the acting life.
I've had so many pseudonyms. It's been but I always take it as the alter ego versus the name that I had. But also I got teased a lot about my name. And I think it was something I was trying to hide from it, because the Afrikaners would always say Dudu Baba, which is like a lullaby, Dudu, and then I didn't understand how it had tormented me for so long that I actually changed my name when I got to university, and I was like, I'm Ginger. And Ginger kind of stuck and became my radio name. But I think now that I'm an adult, when I started to be around Americans, they were like, Dudu means poop. And I was like, I can't run from, I can't run.
Unbelievable.
And my name just means the comforter. It's such a beautiful name, but it's also interesting how language can influence the meaning of the name and, word migration and whatnot. But I mean, it is what it is. But I'm grateful to have this name, and it has made me more empathetic, but also at times it's pissed me off, because then I'm too empathetic and not have boundaries,
You hear someone's name, you immediately have a prejudice, good or bad, about the person.
That's interesting.
For instance, because my name is quite old, people immediately think about serious stuff and history, and you see, and that is not far from my personal interest and my way to be in the world. I'm an old soul, and I carry an old name.
And you are an old soul. And I mean, I think it's maybe the name is a bit also conservative in a sense. Maybe that's what makes people want to classify it in a certain way. And it's also part of, I guess, traditions and conservativeness. But I mean, you have studied and you've graduated from 2 conservatories. And yet you've navigated your career as an independent actor in a city like Paris with so many established institutions. Why was it important for you to forge an independent path? Because when we think of Paris and when we think of French arts, it's very rooted in conservativeness and tradition. And you decided the unconformed stage. You've performed in gardens and churches, art galleries, and even on cruises. How does moving the theatrical experience into this alternative site change the relationship between you and the audience? I know I've asked you 2 questions.
Yes, it's exactly about that. First of all, I think when you're an actor or an actress or an artist, there are things you can control and there are things you really let go. And It's really about meetings, not only social meetings, but
Mm.
also meeting places and new places and finding yourself in new contexts where you never expected before that you would recite a poem or interpret a part. And in my case, I have been really bored with black boxes. I'm talking about conventional theaters at a point. I love them, but I think I needed to visit new dimensions for my acting. And when you're an actor, at least here in France, you're supposed to wait for a director to select you and to employ you on the productions, in the productions. And well, I started to, at the age of 20, to to fall in love with some texts and universes, and I wanted to open the boundaries of my possibilities concerning acting. And I started to invite audiences in gardens, yes, in public halls that are not theaters, and many different institutions. And I observed that text, my proposition, was getting enriched by those places. And also, from time to time, I need to revitalize my passion for theater because, as you mentioned, I started when I was a child, and it's a long love story with this art, which I consider almost as a form of religion in my life. I know it's excessive to put it that way, but I'm really married to theater in a way. And sometimes marriage, you have bad periods, and in those periods, I really need to find a new relation
Mm.
with this passion, with myself acting in front of an audience.
You're making me think about the trajectory of my career as well, and having opened myself up to experimental theater and the non-conventional traditional forms, not only in theater, but also in television. And sometimes I watch television or I watch pieces and I'm like, we lack exploration within as the actor, because there's these structures that require us to just produce. And within traditional contexts, traditional forms in terms of theater, you're producing that same, Othello, with just a bit of like spike over here and a little bit of salt over here. And I'm like, what is this fascination that we still need to reproduce these old classics, which I think are amazing, but they've been done to death. And how, like, for me, it's like, what would it look like if we started investigating beyond just going back to pieces that are as old as time? And what would it look like if we broke, the structure of this traditional form of how we work? And I think it's really nice that you go and you break these structures. And there's also something very spiritual to and rebellious in a sense to go into these churches or to go into a garden, and a garden being so intimate, a church being so intimate. Do you think your work is intimate, or do you think the intimacy comes with part of the work?
I'm used to perform in front of maximum of 300 spectators, and I'm used to perform most of my performances. I perform in front of 50 spectators and sometimes 20. So I see my theater as a form of intimate dialogue, intimate meeting, and I like the idea of performance as a ritual and witnessed by people. And I enjoy intimacy more and more because I think the possibility to whisper a text, to whisper some words to an
Yeah.
audience, or to do very simple movements and gesture, not something enormous, huge, can have so much strength, so much force, on the artistic process.
It's interesting you talk about rituals and the witnessing. And I'm asking myself, we've spent time together. How have you and I never actually dug deep and said, let's collaborate? That's crazy.
Crazy. We should have started a collaboration years ago.
That's what we should have started with, but the friendship formed first. And I think maybe sometimes it needed to start first to be cultivated, and then the art comes later, because I think maybe the world does operate, especially in our industry. It's like everyone you meet, how can we collaborate? How can we collaborate? And maybe we needed to form a relationship first before, a friendship. And then from that, maybe something, because my work is also centralized around rituals and witnessing.
Let me tell you one thing. I have a big admiration for your work, and I guess a bit what it is because I haven't witnessed it.
Yes.
for a while. But it's true that when we work with the idea of ceremony, we give to the audience and to the people something that worth to go out your place. And going out your place is so difficult today. Whether it's going to the theater, to the dance performance or concert, everybody prefers to stay at home. So
Mm.
we have to really create the conditions of something very special to happen, to make them think it's gonna be very, very special and exceptional. And some
And I
and venues are good help for that, because they see
mm.
there is a art performance in this venue. Okay.
Right. And I think there's something about the age of AI now that, people are just glued to the age of AI, the age of social media. People are glued to their phones, and leaving home is not something people actually want to do. How to, yes, this unconventional spaces. I mean, a garden is absolutely amazing. You're relaxing in a garden. You have some wine, and you're watching a performance. It
Exactly.
removes that fourth wall from the old structures of theater.
And also, I used to say, even if the artist is not that good, you still are in a garden or in the place that is nice, and you will remember it. You will remember. We
Mm.
are memory makers, artists. A performance will stay and remain in your mind, in your memory. And I think that is very important, and it's a force today, because it's like our lives became infinite fluxes of activities and images, and somehow theater performances and art meetings stop a bit these fluxes in time and bring us a concrete memory that will stay, whether it's good or bad. We all remember boring performances, but we remember them because we had within the position of spectator a certain quality of boredom or boredness.
Yes, yes,
You're not
yes.
bored during a performance as you're bored when you're doing anything else in this metro or transport or at home. No, you really appreciate something of it's meditative.
When you talk about boredom, in a lot of the public speaking that I've done, it's always for me, it's like when I think of children today and I think of the average world, we're not bored enough. And as artists, when I do lectures, I always say to the students, your creativity it comes from boredom. It comes
Yeah.
from sitting with your mind, sitting with yourself without any outside injection, so that you can be able to receive, you can be able to cultivate, you can be able to investigate. There's no investigation without boredom. But we fear boredom. We live in a society where boredom is not something that we can actually tap into. You can't be bored. You have to constantly be fed information. And I think it's a deliberate pedagogical approach of working to say that let's sit in the boredom. Let's sit in the not mass producing. And especially in the experimental industry, there's so much mass producing. There's always like, you need to work, you need to work, you need to work. And I get it. We need to eat. You know what I mean? But it's like I've had collaborators be upset with me because I'm like, I'm not working on the weekend. What do you mean?
Wow.
And I'm like, no, I'll work on the weekend towards
Mhm.
premiere. But every other day, you cannot claim my weekends because at the end of the day, you're also not paying me for my weekends. And they're like, oh no, but you're being difficult. I'm like, I'm not being difficult. I need to be able to rest, for the text to process, for the performance to actually sit in my body, because in that boredom, the text is able to move. The character or whatever I'm performing can sit in the body. You know what I mean? And then by the time I come back Monday morning, it's in it. I'm ready. I'm refreshed. But if you're going to work me and there's no rest, and I think the luxury of rest for artists is so sad. But speaking of the pedagogy of it, I do want to get into, business pedagogy. You spent part of your time teaching acting tools at engineering and marketing schools. What was the moment you realized that your skills as a classical actor was marketable asset for people in such technical fields? Because artists are always trying to figure out, okay, but if I'm a business, what do I do? If I need to make money outside of being hired, what made you say, you know what, I've got these skills and I'm going to go put them in an environment where it's not really relatable?
Yes, well, I think we're all human beings. We are artists, but an artist can do many things. I'm interested in human development. I'm interested in letting my brain work and teach that, if I can, to others. And my experience in theater, I'm still thinking about our previous topic, like it's okay to get lost and to get bored. And I am quite provocative actually being a teacher, because I really say that to my students. I say, before being very ready and being behave as a professional and being very strict with your practice or in your work, whatever it is, to allow yourself, it's not being crazy, but to allow yourself to really don't understand everything immediately. So there is this all mental aspects and theoretical aspects about public speaking coaching, because that's what I do. It's all about oral expression and communication. But I don't like staying with theoretical aspects. I really believe in practice, and I come to in front of professionals from many fields, many different fields, and I teach them how to train their voices and to really accept their presence in space and appreciate their own voices. It takes time, but I think being a professional and at the moment when you have to deliver a speech, this activity is really not far from an actor's activity, you see? So there are many things that come from acting that are not immediately transferable to, I don't know, a CEO of a company. But I find many ways and many parallels concerning, yes, of course, external behavior, but also how you deal with your convictions. And first of all, and I should have started with that, relation with language. And
Yeah.
which words do you choose to express yourself? And that is a
Mm.
common point for almost every profession. If you sell vegetables in the street, you really have to feel that it's this sentence that works, this type of vocabulary, this register of voice that will call the attention of people. And life is a theater. That's true. Shakespeare said it. To come back to Shakespeare, you mentioned Othello. Shakespeare said, "The world is a stage, and we all have to perform our part."
I think it's very true that we all have to perform our parts, and we all have and are on a daily basis. And it sounds like your work kind of just, you grab the theater and you say, actually cultivate your theater. Don't let the theater just play out for you. So it's the creator's journey, right? It's like, how do you take something that already exists and how do you cultivate it? And it's interesting that, how art is looked down upon as a career in many countries. I've realized in my travels, I've realized that, many people really do, look down on art. And the only form of art that maybe can be looked at as not so looked down is when you're in the National Theatre or you're in an opera. But the rest is really like, oh, you're an actor. But I think that it's very interesting that something that is so fundamental to the society that we live in, from your CEOs to team buildings to all of these, they all require artists to come in and help them speak and help them have confidence and help them be able to articulate themselves. But yet it's always been something that, governments won't even fight for. And I think it's so sad to see, like, for instance, in South Africa, the government doesn't even recognize this as a career. We don't even have a union, And in Norway, the right-wing government just decided to cut a lot of funding to artists. But yet politicians are performers, the biggest performers that we can ever come across. They're theater majors. And I swear, to become a politician, you need to go to some acting training in order for you to perform, So it's very interesting.
It's very interesting, but yes, it's also about knowing your body well, knowing your capacities and limits. I mean, this is part of human experience, to really learn about yourself in the condition of speaking or moving publicly, to start thinking about your public image. And we are not entirely responsible for our public image. You're right. I live in a country that still protect the arts and artists with many difficulties that are our own difficulties, but there is nothing comparable with France. Is in a way still a champion for the arts, but we fight to maintain this stuff that makes you possible to have a career. I don't like the word career, but it is a career that is not a career, but it is still a career. Yeah.
What do you think is actually the contributions to art in a society?
What a question. I think
Sorry.
I think it's essential. I'm still thinking about the politics, and we know that for centuries how the arts were deeply connected with the political orchestrations political makings. For instance, just to say that how art is important, it's you look at the history of painting or theater or any art, and you see how it is the only thing that tells the story of a time. It really defines the society, and it will remain the only trace in time to really know what sort of society we were living in. And at the individual level, art are essential for human development. I hope everyone
Wow.
know about that. It's something we're sure about because we're in the so-called business of the arts, but it is a question I never asked for myself, that it's so obvious for me that the arts are the backbone of social society.
I think in a French context, it's more engraved within governances and it's like more seen as in like, this is what it is. In other countries, I think it's not that it's not there. It's like this struggle to acknowledge its contribution. And one of the things I've been thinking about lately is the world is on fire right now, right? It's everywhere. It's burning. And I thought to myself, when I started in art and when I wanted to become an artist, the artists have always been the revolutionists. But we live in a time where artists are not. And that's very, very interesting. Then I ask myself, okay, what is our duty? Is it our duty? Is it part of the work that we do to question the systems? But have the systems, muted us so well and, have given us repetition of traditional ways in which we need to perform that we forgot to revolt in a sense? Or do you think there is artists now more than ever or less?
Well,
Sorry,
it's
I've gone into
curious.
philosophy.
No problem.
You're very French, so you should get it.
No, but also it's hard to say what I think without making it look like a definitive statement
Yeah.
about how things should be. But along my artistic path, I have seen at the beginning, theater was something so put in light and so important in the French society, and it's not anymore. It exists, but it's not something that is really supported by medias and everything that goes with it. But if you think 2 minutes that theater is maybe the only place where you ask people to switch off that, and
Yes.
so even if the performance is not political or is not, an act of rebellion, something very radical, even if it's very conventional theater play that is performed now, the simple fact to make theater is very strict and in a way cruel, because even in a hospital you use your smartphone, and to have this demand for the audience to stop watching their phone during 1 hour, it's something unbelievable. That made the theater a very special place again. So I never stopped believing in the force of theater and in the and the force of the arts, because even if it's not supported by mainstream medias, we know that it exists, and it shakes you.
I mean, yeah, it really does. And you're one person who's worked in such international collaborations, right? And, how was that artistic identity when you're working across so many different disciplines and also so many different cultures as well? How do you see this collaborative process that you work with, and how do you hold space for that, and how do they hold space for you as well?
The international stage for me means the intercultural dialogue between cultures. I come from a culture that is very strong, that has the reputation to be, and it's true, to be very sophisticated. And so for a French young boy, it's enough doing theater with only the French references. You can build up your career here in France just with, it's enough working with the French institutions and French characteristics, how they are. You don't have to visit foreign countries, actually. But I was very touched personally I have met people from other cultures since I was a child. And at the age of 18, 19, it was clear that I wanted to become an international artist. And it was not that easy, because I was surrounded by musicians, dancers who had absolutely no problem to travel with the performances. Theater is a bit different. If you use spoken language, well, I've learned English language. I hope I don't speak it too badly.
That's great.
And Portuguese, I'm in love with words, so I've learned other languages, but I'm able to perform at my best in French. And it was not that easy to meet other theater companies from abroad and to really find how it's possible to work with other artists in the world with the same language. And we find out that theater is a language in itself, that, training your body, rehearsing, there is always a way to overcome language barrier. So yes, if I think about intercultural dialogue, I should speak about this so-called language barrier.
Yeah.
That is not really a barrier. Okay, you're lucky because South African, you speak English, so you can travel all around the world without any problem.
I think, yes, I can travel all over the world, and I think it's been a huge advantage with that. But what I found myself in Scandinavia, and Norway it's very homogenous, and the first and foremost, you need to learn the language. And I was like, even if I learned the language, I can never fully express my acting in Norwegian. It's a dissonance for me because the cultures are two extremes, It's not only European culture, but it's also Northern Europe, which is far from the South. It identifies with other cultures. There's been a lot of migration into the south of Europe. And then you have the West as well. Germany's more open, the Netherlands. They're still very strict, but a little bit more immigration coming in. And then you got Norway, The Vikings are just like, well, that's just how it is. And we just speak Norwegian. And I remember I was on set.
Same here. Same in
Huh?
France. Same
Huh?
in France.
Yeah. And for me, it's like, how do I express myself from culture that is so far removed from me, that is meekish and, very, oh, we're polite. We do not disturb. You cannot be loud. You cannot express. And even in your expression, it has to be really subtle. And, so I struggle to be able to find text and go into it, and I'm like, yeah, but that's not how, as a woman of color, I would be able to interpret that. This one director, I remember,
Means you performed Hedda Gabler,
I did not.
just to mention a very classic Norwegian role.
No, I could not do that. And I think even there was a show which was very futuristic type. It was a gaming show, like gamers. Like these guys were gamers, and the script was written for a black woman, but whoever wrote the script did not understand what a black woman sounded like. And I remember I went into the audition and I said to the director, I'm gonna do it, but this doesn't really sound like a black woman. And she's like, "Oh, it's fine. We can talk about it." I went to the audition. I got a call back and we're doing a reading with everyone. And I said, I've gone through it. And to be honest, the script still feels like it's written by a white person. I don't know how to interpret this. And I don't know how to deliver something that doesn't sound like how I would say it. It sounds like it's spread over. It sounds a little American, a little this. And there's a little bit of racism in there. And, we went back and forth with the director, and the director's like, actually, this is too much work. We're going to scrap your character. And that's how I left the show. That never picked up. My character was never there because I questioned the system. And I think with that, for me, it's language is very fundamental to how we express, but I think they can be a bridge in
System, as you mentioned, it has its own language. And
Yeah.
if you really want to break social conventions and social codes, that is not always very agreeable, the response.
No, it is not. And I think like global, it sounds amazing to be a global artist. But in the traditional form, it doesn't work.
No, it doesn't work. I participated to many international programs, and also I benefited from a network that exists in the world, that is the network of French institutes. Have you heard about French institutes and Goethe institutes? It's a permanence of we talk about neo-colonialism concerning those places. Well, the fact is that there are places for culture anyway that really promote interesting and important activities all around the globe. And I have been lucky enough to travel with this network. But also when I go to Brazil, for instance, I often work in Brazil or Denmark as well. I work deeply with their institutions, not with French institutions abroad, you see? But anyway, I think I feel more French abroad. You always, when you
Yes.
travel, there's also
Yes.
that you understand more about yourself and your own
In your
culture.
culture. Yes, I got that one. Yeah.
And so I have learned abroad that I was looking like a French boy, for instance. For some people far away, I am the embodiment of French boy, and this I didn't know here in my own country, and I didn't know what were the canons of French culture
Oh.
from foreign eye, foreign look. And this you learn by knowing the audiences far away from France, and it's very, very interesting. And also knowing about your origin and your nationality. You can also overcome those aspects and just be an actor, you know? After 5 minutes on stage, normally the audience have to see the character to fill in the universe, the artistic universe, and not thinking about, oh, okay, the guy or this girl comes from South Africa. There is this metamorphosis that should happen. That's why we are who we are, artists, and not just representative of our countries.
This is very true. Like, we are basically vessels in a sense,
Yes.
like empty vessels when we come into spaces. But we can never fully empty ourselves out, I feel. I feel like we can attempt it, but our archive will always be present. You know, it will
Yeah.
always dominate. And I think instead of maybe the new lens that we need to look at international collaboration shouldn't be that how do we empty out and become indifferent? How do we just be indifferent or there's nothing to me? But okay, what do I bring? What do you bring? And what's in the middle? I always find the intersection that the middle is where the interesting part is. It's that
Mm.
meeting point, you know, like you're here, I'm here, we meet to do a collaboration. This part is where the gold is because it's that intersection. It's not in your own country or in your own environment, like French environment or South African environment. Yes, I can fully be who I am and I understand how to embody that. But once you cross over, I think, cross border, the fun is really what can I learn from Theo? What can Theo learn from Dudu? But also what's happened? What is being created in this void? Yeah, I don't know. I think it could be. But I mean, you have with all those masters that you've worked with internationally and the perspectives that you've gotten and all these global perspectives that have helped you build a sustainable career. How does it also, how do you bring that and build a sustainable career in France?
If it is sustainable, well, it is sustainable. It's sustainable for 10 years. It will be sustainable next year and the next, but I don't know about the rest of my professional life. If it is sustainable, it is mainly because of my personal taste for diversification and polyvalence. I recognize the facility. I mean, it's easy to have a sustainable career when you can really diversify your activity. And an actor can do many things. Of course, I can be somehow a bit teacher. My last project was public readings. I'm invited to read books and stories in venues. After our podcast, I will register my voice for audio guide for my hometown.
That's lovely.
You see, so, and I'm still maintaining my memory for two parts, two roles I have on two productions, and also the poems I love to learn by memory. So, and no place for cinema for the moment, but why not in the future get in the industry of cinema? That's my part of my interest. And so you see, we have different employers. I mean, it's a necessity to have various employers, unless your company is as strong to be your employer and to but your financial income will always, I think, at least here in France, it comes from diverse sources. That's
I
why it's
think,
sustainable.
yeah, I think that's the only way that we can survive the arts in order, because I think it also comes with this romanticism of the broke artist, oh,
There
so
is no
romantic, the suffering. And I'm like, no, I like things and I cannot.
no. Every artist I know, actors or painters or musicians, hours and hours in front of Gmail, just doing the
Yeah.
administrative tasks. I mean,
Yes.
there is romanticism. Absolutely not. It's not La Bohème. On many aspects, I haven't had a youth, a life, I didn't take advantage of many. When you have a conscious of that you have a premiere or performances ahead, you become someone very preoccupied by your passion. That's beautiful. I don't want to complain about that, but it's a permanent concern, a permanent concern. For instance, if it's sustainable, just to come back to what makes a sustainable career, it's the notion of your agenda, of your calendar. We're in February now, there will be March, April, June. It's a necessity to visualize these months, your life ahead, and it's not easy. And many times you fail and things are not working as you wanted they work.
Yep. And also I think like institutions, especially when you're sitting applying for funding or co-productions, they are also ahead as well. You know, co-production doesn't happen instantly. You have to put it into your program and whatnot. And I guess this is the business side of being an artist, where you have to look at your calendar. You have to say, okay, what are the scheduling? You're your own producer per se. You're
Yeah,
producing, you're coordinating, but there is a level of burnout and exhaustion that comes with that. And I am super guilty for having multiple burnouts in my career. And that also made me not want to come back to creation anymore, because I was like, why does creation have to take everything out of me? What is a better alternative of making sure that I can outsource, I can make enough money to hire people? And at some point I did. I would have people who would help me out. But at the same time, I do understand artists who says, why can't I just come in and just be an artist? You know, just like the
exactly.
guy who studied
Not al-
engineering.
and not always being, sorry to say that, but not
No, that's
always
fine.
being artpreneur.
Yes.
Artpreneur as
Yes.
having it's beautiful notion, I think, but because the
The
economic
reality.
realities are here, but having always every day a capitalistic look on your work
Yes.
is not healthy, especially because being an artist, what does that mean? That means be able to live and get inspired by very silly things and by long period of silence
Yeah.
and non-activity as well. There's no rule in this. There is no rule, but it's beautiful to
Mm.
invent your own rules, as it is beautiful
Yeah.
to mastering your calendar, even if it sometimes can lead you to the burnout.
Yeah.
It's hard to say no because you
Yes. Yes.
always have to say yes to every proposal.
I I find that interesting, this hard to say no. I think I've had an interesting career where I've said no a lot of times. I've said no. And I've said no because some people wanted to work me to the ground. Some people wanted to pay me less than what I was worth, less than my white counterparts, less than my male counterparts, although I'm more qualified. You know what I mean? So I think there is something about also being able to stand up for yourself and trusting that better will come. And indeed better did come because I valued my worth. And I feel like a lot of the times artists are so scared of not having work that they don't value their work. And what I learned early is that if you don't put a value to who you are, somebody else will value you. Somebody else will
True.
create the scale, right, of what
Mhm.
they think you're worthy of. And if you don't do it earlier on, you're always going to be called for the jobs that want to pay you, 500 euros, or the jobs that want to pay you 50 euros or 50 cents or whatever is the case. And you'll ask yourself, but I'm so qualified. And they'll always be like, sorry, we don't have a budget. And I had to sit with myself and I said, how much do you want my expertise? How much do you
Mm.
want me and what I bring? And I've had to say, I'm so sorry, but I'm going to have to decline. And I would love to collaborate with you. But, please call me when you have a budget. Because what they also do is that they're blocking the bigger stuff. What if somebody else comes to you tomorrow and says, hey, I've got a bigger role with a bigger salary? And then you're like, crap, I took the 50 euros.
Yes,
Like,
people who want to negotiate your price, it's always, difficult situation to live. And during years, for instance, I used to say, it's cheap, I'm cheap, I'm cheap, I'm cheap, until the moment I realized it was counterproductive.
yes.
And so, yes, that's market. It's not
Yeah.
good. I don't like talking about using the language of neoliberalism and market for my art, but at the same time,
You have to.
I have to, but not, I
Yeah.
mean, it has to be subtle. If we talk about prices and costs, we still have to think that we don't sell a product.
Yeah.
We offer something that comes from who we are. It's a creation. And if we talk about creation, I like have it's necessity to talk about prices, but we have to remain always delicate with those questions. And I think there is a brutality in market exchange that I
Oh.
really don't want in my artist life.
Hmm.
You know what I mean?
I hear you. I think you and I maybe might come from a different corner of things. And I think I respect that you don't want to have the conversation so much and you want to really palate it. I feel like in my career when I've done that, I have been really undervalued. And also living in structures that are very not so favorable to a person who looks like me, like you have to actually kind of fight a little bit. And I think the biggest gift that I can give myself has been fighting for my market value. Not aggressively per se, but just saying, thank you, but please call me when you have a budget. I'd love to work with you. I'm not
Mhm.
denying that, but I want to be able to not take up brain capacity of thinking of when am I going to eat? How am I going to pay rent? Because I'm working on a project that can barely make ends meet. For the love of creation, yes, I love creation. But at the same time, I think I still need to be able to be sustainable. And I think the gift that the universe has given me of creation has to be able to be traded for something. It's a gift, right? It has to be able to maintain me so that I can live, so that tomorrow I can be able to create again. And that I don't have, resentment towards this gift that I can create, because I'll be like, this gift is making me a pauper. I'm stressed. I can't even afford anything. So, yeah, I think for me, the market value thing and the entrepreneurial part is that I am an establishment with a gift. It's like a healer, right? Even when you go, like, let's look at old shaman or a traditional healer, you go to them and you pay for their services, right?
Yes.
Because you know it's going to heal you. And they will,
Mhm.
and you never debate with a healer of how
You don't,
much they're willing to pay that.
you don't negotiate with.
No, it's you don't negotiate it, but somehow we, I think, romanticize our negotiation. Oh, the product is non-tangible. And what if we made it tangible and said, actually, the product is tangible. It might not be a pen, but
Yes.
it's a service and it's a product that I've given you, that you are feeling the product. You're seeing the product. It's doing something to you. It's not necessarily something you can take home, which is very capitalistic in that sense. But what if we moved the value service that the product is a shaman who lays, or somebody who does Reiki on you? But you can't really see what the Reiki is doing, but you paid the Reiki master. Yeah.
Well, you have said one thing that is very important, and I think it will never be said enough that we all have to be treated equally in this world. And since I know you, do you have opened my eyes on many realities that are, I mean, of course, because of my gender and or skin color, I haven't had the same fights in life than yours. You have and being undervalued, for instance, it's something I might have known this situation one or two times, but not that much.
Yeah.
And so I think it's very unfair, and I think every performer should be regarded independently from what he looks like, what or she
Yeah.
or he looks. So this I wanted to say because we don't think too much about that, and it should not be, how to say, well, you got me.
It was not my intention, but yeah, was my. I mean, like, I mean, there's lots of artists who I've met, and especially actors who like we just want to do the craft. I don't want to think about all of that. But the reality is that it's nice. It's nice not to have too much weight and
And
still be able to practice.
yes, you're right. And I don't know about the South African situation, but here in Europe, since COVID times and the pandemic times, have an increase of prices, all increase of prices.
Worldwide.
Okay, in South Africa the same, so I guess it's the same everywhere.
Yeah. Yeah. Norway is
So,
crazy as well.
and only last year, I began to adjust my prices with this increase.
Yeah.
But I finally did it because everyone does it. Every marketplace,
Yeah. And
every
also the food
professional,
is good.
and no artist
Yeah.
really raise their prices with this
Yeah.
fear to not being employed later on.
Yeah. But the food, you cannot give me 50 euros and expect me, and when bread is 50 euros, when bread has gone up from
Yeah.
1 euro to 2 euros 50, you give me 50 euros for my salary per day. It doesn't make sense. Rent has increased, food has increased. I
And I
love
think we have the
art.
same situation.
Yeah.
The same situation that is that our only income is our professional work.
Yeah.
We don't benefit from our family. We're not
Yeah.
helped or supported by anyone. So in this situation, we have to calculate.
How, so I appreciate to still bring me back to the love of art. And in a utopia, we should not be talking about the capitalistic side of it. And maybe as artists, we can start standing up for capitalism because it's destroying us. And it's fast. I had a thought earlier on that I think social media is the new theater.
Yes, it is. Definitely.
It is the new theater. Because I hear a lot of us artists, we talk about, oh, theater is dying. Theater hasn't died. It's migrated to
No, it has
1 minute
migrated, but
videos. The art of it is gone, yes.
we have to love theater and the arts for what they are. I mean, they
Yeah.
can be many things. I don't want to define strictly the limits of theater, but after all, it's about a meeting of two entities, artists and spectators, in a
Yeah.
common space. And
Yeah.
this, we cannot go out from that. So it's important to defend and love the arts for what they are. And if multimedia tools can be allies for our creation, wonderful. That's fantastic. But all the big emotions, all the important feelings, we
The
never have
interperson.
in front of a screen. Let's think
Yeah.
about that. Or big screen if it's for a movie in the movie theater.
Which is also
But
dying.
it's also dying. At least here it's not, but yes, it's dying as well. Yes, you're no, but it's true. If I hear about fresh news all over the world, movie theaters are closing one
Closing,
after
yeah.
the other. And experiencing a movie on a wide screen is something we really have to educate young people with. Children, they have to know about that. They really have to. There is something incomparable with it.
I love
And,
this. We're doing it for the future generation to know that this art form used to exist.
yes, and it requires a bit of an effort. Go out your place again to pay your ticket, to take your coat, to go to the place, but then you're rewarded. You're always
Yeah.
rewarded.
My final question, you and I can talk forever, and I love that.
It's been a while.
For the artists listening who feel confined by the traditional industry, what is one piece of advice you'd give them about creating their own stage? And can people find your work
Okay, well, my work can be found
in gardens
I
and
can find it,
churches?
yeah, on many places. But it's always hard to give general advice, because each path is so different, each way is so different. But my advice would be to really enjoy the preparing process of a project, the rehearsing process, to enjoy the elaboration, the time for elaboration. Because from the outside, if you're not an artist, you always think that what's valuable is the time for applauses and being on stage. It's so short comparing to the long process of making process of a project. So, and I think it's good to remind people and artists that we have to take a big source of joy in the making process and not always appreciating the end and the final result. It's beautiful, the final result. A premiere is always an important moment in life, but it's so beautiful to research and to find yourself well and at ease in the position of a researcher. And then people can see my work as a steps of researches, a research that never ends. And now, currently, I'm performing in Paris. I will have different performances this year. And if perhaps at the end of the year, a tour in South America, in Chile, and in Brazil with poetry, because my big mission over the last years is to say and to show that poetry is not something decorative or boring.
No.
Poetry can be lived
Yeah.
collectively and appreciated beautifully with a group of people. That's my current work, and I'd love to visit your country and to come to Johannesburg.
We need to collaborate. Plus, I just finished a poetry book. So There's a lot there. We have so much to do. I think we need to sit down and we need to figure out how do I get back to Paris, because you know what happened the last time when I was supposed to get to Paris.
I-
It was such a, my God. And I actually had to do the conference speech via Zoom, and it was a mess. But I like, the plan was I was supposed to get to Paris. We're supposed to see each other. But I would love for us
We'll
to figure out.
organize your conference in a big hall here, okay?
Huh?
Let's organize your conference in a big place in Paris.
Right? I think that would be amazing. I think there's so much more that we can dabble into over there. And I think the advice of you saying that the journey is the most beautiful part. And it, for
That's it.
me, it
To say that the journey is the most beautiful. Mm,
kind of reminds me of the old age saying that life is a journey, not the destination. I don't
mhm.
know if you've heard of it. Yeah. So there's never a destination, because even on premiere night, there's a destination tomorrow when you have to perform again. But what made the biggest difference to you and who you became in that journey, and how you investigated the work and how it sat in your body and how it released, the process is bigger than the delivery. I think what social media cannot do is give you that journey.
That was beautifully said. Well,
On
thank
that
you
note,
for
thank you
asking me
so
all
much, Theo.
this kindly. You were
You
so
did such.
kind.
I
Thank you.
reciprocate energy. Like, you came in and you were just so calm today.
People want me to be like that all the time.
So let me meet him in his softness, because I know you've met me in my. So let me give you some softness as well, which is, I mean, it cultivates different conversations. It's the empath, right? You kind of like meet people where they are, and it gives what it's supposed to give. If
Hmm.
I was here and you're here, it wouldn't make good television.
But you're the professional, you know about it.
No, I'm not. Thank you so much, Theo. I
What you
appreciate
to
you
do.
so much.